Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Michael Maher Live. It's not the most creative show title, but it's a title that I've got. And this is a show where we kind of talk about anything that's brand related. There's really no rules. And today I have with me Lauren Livak Gilbert. She's executive director of the Digital Shelf Institute. That was a little bit of a mouthful, but thank you for joining me. I got it right. I practiced. But thank you for joining me. You know that I run an agency that works with brands, helps them to grow, accelerate, become a category leader on Amazon. You have a lot of familiarity in that world as well. So tell us a little bit more about what you do, Lauren.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So the Digital Shelf Institute is a community of brand manufacturers and retailers across the digital space. So think if you own e-commerce or digital in your organization, we are a community where you can talk to other people who are doing the same job as you. And we create a lot of content. We also have a podcast called Unpacking the Digital Shelf. So really just trying to help people in seat today who are building brands, who are working in the digital shelf space, do their job better. And I come from the brand world. So I'm really passionate about this because when I was on the brand side, I wish I knew other people doing my job and I wish I could talk to them. And that is the problem that we try to solve at the DSI.
If you think about e-commerce, there's no degree.
There's no degree.
However, I will say there's at least no like formalized.
There's only one or two. They're popping up at different universities that are focused on e-commerce, but they're not. It's not very prevalent.
I don't know that it is necessary. However, I will say that there are other places that you could potentially get one, like CXL. I created a selling on marketplaces or selling online marketplaces for people. So someone could go and watch that. Super comprehensive, but it's also tied in with other things that are e-commerce related. So let's talk about marketing. Let's talk about UX, UI. Let's talk about whatever you want to do from the e-commerce perspective. So that's something that people could go and take advantage of. But I think you honestly learn a lot just by being on the job. But it certainly is helpful to have other people to go to because you also get perspective. The way that I look at this certain report, maybe I'm getting something good from it, but what else are other people seeing? And is there something that maybe I'm not getting because I'm just looking at it in a different way?
And the topic specifically that you mentioned about e-commerce and there's no degree, it's actually a kind of a huge challenge in our industry because there aren't a ton of people coming up through e-commerce or understanding more of the details. And there's a shortage of people who are able to support that. And there's a lot of job openings for people who have that expertise, but it's not the same type of expertise for someone who maybe is selling into a retailer from an in-store perspective or someone who's in finance or legal. And you don't need to have 10 years of experience to be an expert in e-commerce because it changes so quickly. So it's actually a topic I'm very passionate about. I think we need more education, especially at the academic level, to understand what is a product detail page. Why is digital challenging? Why is Amazon hard to work with? Because there is a need for these types of roles, especially at manufacturers when they're expanding their teams. And there's a huge opportunity if you're interested in digital and you're a quick learner and you want to be in this space to really kind of upskill quickly. So I'm really glad you said that because it's something I'm super passionate about.
I must have known. I think that it is fast-paced. It can be very challenging. I think a lot of the basics are the same, but I also think that the perspective makes a big difference. And what I mean by that is, you notice Amazon, of course, is notoriously difficult to work with. It's just a reality. Even from a service provider perspective, someone who's on it every day, working with Amazon every day across multiple disciplines, across multiple categories, like that really does not change. And so I think that's a benefit that someone who has a lot of experience across multiple brands, we can be a little bit brand agnostic. Like, could we say, hey, we're only going to focus on supplements? Certainly, but we know at least something about your product and you tell us about what's going on, we can start to do some of the category research and then hone in more on where you feel like you're differentiated from a product perspective. But as Amazon has changed fees, for example, a lot of Amazon brands, a lot of Amazon native brands are pissed. They're like, oh, the fees are increasing, et cetera, et cetera. when what I mean by perspective is when you go and you look at retail first brands, they love Amazon because they're thinking about sliding fees. Apparently my
Oh, thumbs up.
they're thinking about sliding fees. They're thinking about getting in front of using a broker. They're thinking about getting in front of a buyer. If they then get their product in store, how many stores are they going to get in? Like there is a lot of complications that brands that are digitally native, I don't think understand from a retail side. So really what perspective you come from, I think can make a big difference in how you want to embrace something digitally.
But I also think that is super important to call out because it's not like we're saying at these brands, like you should only be digital focused. You need to have both sides.
Right.
These manufacturers that have been around for 150 years are experts in selling in store, which is fantastic. Yeah. But you need to bridge the gap between the e-commerce team and the in-store team and stop operating as separate businesses. That's what the challenge is. And I think you made a really great point. It's what we're doing is really not rocket science. Like the concepts are basic. It's just really hard to execute because if you think about it, we've been doing the same thing for so many years. Technically, e-commerce has only been around for 31 years. That's when Amazon started and they started selling books. But if you think about like retail stores and how long people have been selling in brick and mortar, it's hundreds of years. So you're trying to change the way people have operated for so long. It takes time, and it also takes understanding the value that you're driving to be able to change org structures and processes and ways of thinking. It's not easy to do that.
It's a great point. Lots of great points. And what I think what you touched on and I love is instead of thinking about retail versus e-commerce or D2C or whatever the case might be, how do those things work together or how can they? And I hear less people that are worried about Amazon cannibalizing their direct-to-consumer site sales. I feel like I have heard that a lot more in the past, but I'm not hearing it as much. I think people realize that Amazon is where people are shopping and that it can have a different function. But how can you make those things work together? And how can you think about the customer experience? I'm seeing a lot more like shopper marketing positions show up at brands. It's like thinking about the consumer experience. People are not just going to a store. They're not just experiencing something on Instagram. They are not just going to Amazon. They're getting multiple touch points. So how do you make that consistent? And how do you have the same message and reach that audience where they're at?
It is an excellent question. And for anyone who is trying to do that right now, they know it's challenging. And that's because of how organizations are set up. So you have a sales function, you have a marketing function, you have a shopper marketing function. And I think shopper marketing is going through a bit of an identity crisis right now as a function.
Sure.
There's a lot of organizations that are renaming it into omni-channel, or they're shifting it or taking away responsibilities. So that is really kind of ever evolving. But I think one of the core principles, and it's something that any organization can do, is change how people are measured. If the sales team who's focused on brick and mortar is only measured on in-store sales numbers, and then the e-commerce team is only measured on their online sales numbers, you're fundamentally siloing your organization and pinning people against each other.
Right.
And you're not all going towards the same goal.
No, I got that sale. I want that sale attributed to me.
Because you want your bonus.
Right, exactly. What about just total company? I mean, if you're a salesperson and you're selling a product somewhere, of course you want to get credit for that, or maybe have some kind of compensation structure. So like if you're in the sales side and you're selling it to Walmart, you're like, hey, I got them to order this much. Maybe there's some kind of compensation tied to that for sure. But what if it was like overall company visibility and that's how people were measured? Is that kind of where you feel like people should be going with this?
Yes. And if you are focused on Walmart, you shouldn't just be focused on Walmart in store. You should be focused on Walmart omnichannel, because we all know that in-store shopping is influenced by online shopping. It's not like there's this wall between the two where I, Lauren, only go in-store to buy this product and I only go online to buy this product. To your point, the customer journey is no longer a straight line. I like to call it a squiggle. There's lots of different ways that you can go. You can see an ad on Instagram. You can see a retail media ad on another site. You can go in the store and not buy it. You can order it on your phone and have it dropped off at home. There's so many different ways that you can get to the product, but organizations are not built that way. they're built based on channel. And there's so many new channels that we're now thinking about. And if you think about AI agents, you can look at that as a new channel and how they're recommending products and how you're interacting with them to get product recommendations. So you need to fundamentally shift your thinking as an organization. How are you set up? How are you measured for success? What data are you looking at to inform those decisions? You need to have data sets that are connected across your entire customer journey. And I think you said it really well. From a consumer standpoint, you have to have that hat on at all times. That is the shift that needs to happen. And I know it sounds so simple, but it's really easy when you're at a brand to just kind of put your blinders on and say, hey, this makes the most sense. We should do this, without thinking, oh, hey, is that what my consumer actually wants? Is that what we should be doing?
So we're worried about brands siloing things. Throw in something like generative AI, which has shifted a lot recently. Very hot topic still. And I think something we talked about, before we even went live was, one, how are brands leaning into this? How are they thinking about where you show up? What's your, if people are looking at share of voice, in search, what's now your share of Rufus? Maybe that's something that people might be looking at eventually. And there's really not a lot of metrics on the Amazon side for measurement of that. Although I have talked with people and they've seen searches inside of search term reports show up that look like a generative AI search result. But I'm also wondering, how much is the consumer going to adopt it? Because it's more prevalent, I think, in the business world. Someone like myself or you might be thinking, how do I utilize this? Or even someone in a corporate job, how do I utilize this to reduce my work? I know companies have rolled stuff out. But the consumer, are they going to adopt it? How soon are they going to adopt it? I think it's certainly going to be sooner than something else. But people searching on Google, that took a while for that to build out. People even shopping and buying on Amazon, that took a while. So maybe it's going to condense down more. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's more going to impact how people shop and start being so ingrained in that process that people will start using it even though they don't know they are. And what I mean by that is the concept of Rufus is conversational. So instead of saying, okay, Michael, you're going to go to the store and you're going to buy some milk. Instead of going and just having a transaction, or you go to the store and you buy barbecue sauce because you're having a barbecue, you're instead going to go online and be like, hey, I'm hosting a barbecue for 5 people and I want to come up with some really great recipes. That's more of an occasion mission-based shopping experience, where that's how we talk and that's how we plan, right? We think about the event we're planning for. We think more broadly outside of just a specific category. So the way I see AI really impacting is from a category perspective, because it's crossing categories. If you're planning for a barbecue, you might have barbecue sauce, you might have meat, you might have veggies, you might have desserts. There's a lot of different things.
Maybe you need a new grill. Maybe you need napkins for the grill. Maybe you need 100%. To do landscaping outside.
But all different categories. Sure. You cut across the category. So it'll change that. And now that Rufus is integrated into the Amazon search bar. So when you search for those things, it has questions that Rufus asks you that you can click on. So it's not just this separate thing in the corner over here. It's actually integrated. Yeah. And then product discovery is just going to change. I think we as consumers want less options because there are so many options.
Data overload, only get 5 or 6. A big problem.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, think about why you only look at the first page of Amazon. How much time do you have to truly scroll through all of those products? I don't have time for that. Do you?
No, and I think it matters what you're looking for. If I'm looking for something for my hair, I might spend a little bit more time off Amazon doing some research, looking at an influencer. You wouldn't know it, but I have naturally curly hair, and it's very thick. Okay. Yes, I know my daughter's
curly hair club.
Yeah, my daughter's you need to wear it curly. I'm like, it's just a little bit harder for me to deal with. She's like, it looks so much better, and then she wants to do it, but I'm like, you got to give it some volume. Anyway, there's a whole separate conversation.
I get curly hair life is not the same every day.
Right. So my hair that's super curly, someone who's more thin or flat, someone who's more textured and thick, all those people are going to want to find something. But then they're going to go to Amazon and likely purchase the product. Whereas if I'm just looking for a Bluetooth mouse, do I really care about the brand? Maybe I want a Logitech. Maybe I don't know if Anker makes Bluetooth mouses, but they probably do. But I want to look for something and I want to get it quick. So I think the shopper experience has to be really quick and to the point. And that's why when we work with the brand, and sometimes I see, on an A+ page, just text. And I'm like, no one's reading this. That's wasted real estate. Do I think people are reading your bullet points? No, I honestly don't. And it's below.
But the algorithm is.
The algorithm is reading. So that's why you put search terms in there, and maybe you put a story to talk about intent, but you need to put those things in media assets. What are people seeing? Are you telling them why they should purchase and do it quickly? And there's actually, I want to say it was a 2022 letter to shareholders. It talked about how quickly people purchase, and 50% of people purchase in 15 minutes or less from getting on the site to actually buying, and 28% purchase in 3 minutes or less.
It makes sense. You go on, you hit buy, done.
And it's easy. So I actually think Amazon has trained people, one, to want better service. Like, I can return something at any time. They've trained people to get fast shipping. You've noticed direct-to-consumer sites now offer free shipping or 2-day, whatever the case might be. And Amazon's they've ruined us, but they've trained us, and they've taken buy with Prime. And now they're helping brands to leverage that on their site. So when you look at search results on Amazon, keep generative AI out of it for now. When you go and you search like curly, you start to type in, you get the type ahead. So maybe you're no longer searching something that you wanted to search. You're like, okay, that's a good enough search. I'm going to go for that. And that's why I think Amazon can track terms and say, well, this term is consistently, within the top 10,000 search frequency rank. Why would that be? Are 10,000 people really searching the exact same thing? No, they're trained to now look at a couple things and they type ahead and then go for that. So I think that's probably what's going to happen on the Rufus side is people start to use it. It's integrated already. To your point, I think it was a great call out. Like, it's in there, so you have an option to use it. People start to use it, and then we get trained on how to do it. And maybe it happens a little bit quicker because it's not like change to where you go. It's change the function of like where you're already at.
And it helps you ask questions you might not have thought about. Like, for example, let's say on the curly hair example, like I try to look for alcohol-free anything because it really dries out my hair, right? But what if I was just starting to look and I didn't know that that was something that I should pay attention to, or maybe I should have a different kind of hair, and Rufus asked me this question and recommended a product. So it also kind of helps you hone in on those different things. But I think the most important part about everything that you just said for a brand is if you don't know how your consumer is shopping or the questions that they are asking about your product, then you are going to be missed in this whole revolution of Rufus and AI agents, because they are suggesting the questions based on your bullets, your images, what's on the internet, not just what's on Amazon. And they can actually look at words on images. So there's so many different ways that it's pulling in this information, including ratings and reviews. So I just think you have to be so much more tapped in truly to what your consumer wants, how they search, and what they like about your product. And those are the brands that are really going to stand out.
So let's talk about how I love practical advice. I love things that people can go and use, and they can check our BS meters to see if we're real or if we're just, blowing smoke. And to the point about education, I think you're right. There needs to be more good education that's not just, here's the education, work with me. Don't get me wrong. I want to put out content that's going to attract people to me. Go figure. I want to do marketing for my agency. You want to do marketing for Digital Shelf Institute. But I think there should be there's a little bit of a veil of like, you said it's not rocket science. It's really not. And I think someone who is really great at advertising on Amazon, I don't think it means like, I think people want sometimes them to think like, I'm the smartest and I'm the best. And maybe that could be true, but maybe it's just, you have a really good understanding of what's there and you're making the right tweaks and you know when to, pull things. Sometimes I do think there's a little bit of intuition, although the word data gets thrown around a lot, but like how much are you using data? How much of it is intuition? And honestly, I think a lot of it is just a really big experiment. I don't think anybody 100%. Wants to admit on the ad side that we do my agency does a bunch of research beforehand. So we're getting away from discovery spend and going towards more exact stuff. And you can say whatever you want about that, but we're going to have a lot more control over pushing market share. because we're going after specific things and not letting Amazon determine what we go after. But it's going to require a lot of spend. It's going to require us to really be, at the wheel. But we do a lot of research, and then we say, let's see how this goes. I can't guarantee that it's going to work, but I think based on your product features and based on the amount of searches and based on how much budget you have, this is going to be the right case. And I know that our segmentation is going to be good. Okay, now let's see what works. And I think when people are like, we know exactly what to do, blah, 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 let me tell you what to do. And I'm like,
we're all figuring it out.
Do you even know
nobody has it figured out.
Do you even know what this brand's problem is? Like maybe it's profitability, maybe it's not revenue. Anyway, practical stuff. What are some things? I have some ideas, but I'm really curious to know from your perspective, what are things that a brand could do to think about or get a better understanding of customer journey?
Look at your ratings and reviews if you haven't done so already. Like really dive into them. Look at how people are talking about you on Reddit. I know people don't think about that, but there's a cult following for a lot of products. So there's this like tattoo lotion, and they have, I think it's called Rabbit. And they have this entire thread on Reddit about how people use it after they've gotten a tattoo and like how it's just like super moisturizing. I mean, there are threads and threads and threads on different products on Reddit. Think about where your consumers are talking, your ratings and reviews, your direct to consumer site, Reddit, social media. Start looking at those things. What are they asking about? Do they have complaints? Are there things they don't like? Do they have ideas about new products? Go and do that. And then if you are a large brand and you have a customer care center, so a lot of products on the back of the product, I have a bottle here, it has like a number you can call. So if you have a reaction or if something happens, or if you just want to say how amazing the product is, you can call. And most brands have a customer care center, and they have so much data because people call and they want to tell you things. If you're at a large manufacturer and you don't know where your customer care center is, go talk to them. Go get that insight. Go look through the data and see what people are talking about. So that would be my first recommendation, because it's an easy one to just kind of go scour the internet. And then I think if you're putting the AI spin on things, ask Rufus about your product. Ask them about your category. Ask a bunch of questions about that specific category, whether it's lotion for sensitive skin or curly hair cream or whatever it is. Just start asking. And also look at ChatGPT, ask questions, see how your brand is showing up. Really just kind of play around. And I like that you said test and learn is really the way to go, because I think you have to just be comfortable trying things out, looking around, digging in and seeing kind of how your brand is being showcased. And I think that is the first place to start when you think about understanding what your consumer is saying. And then you need to sit internally and you need to identify every single person that touches your consumer journey. And that can be everyone from R&D to supply chain, shopper marketing, customer care center. You really need to sit down and understand internally how your customer journey works from function to function and map that out, because you might be missing a fundamental part of that process.
Yeah.
For example, if you have a ratings and review and there's a complaint about one of your products because, making this up, maybe the lid doesn't fully close and it leaks. Does your R&D team know that? Because they really need to fix that, and they shouldn't be continuing to make new products.
Product and package design. Do they know that they need to make tweaks? And
so mapping that out, you need to know those things and you need to know who's involved, and it's much bigger than just the Amazon sales team. So I think those are really the first two things I would really do. And I've had a bunch of workshops where I've sat with brands and we've had sometimes 50 people in the room, and someone will be like, well, I'm doing this. And someone will be like, well, I'm doing that. Why are you doing that? And it's so enlightening just to bring everyone together and just have that broad conversation.
There is, in bigger organizations, I've seen a lot of, you've got people that are wanting to advance their careers. And so they're thinking about what's the next thing I can do, or what am I doing? But also like, well, that's not my job, so I'm not going to do that. But I think, so there's sometimes like a passing of the buck, but people will say, like you said, I'm going to go do this thing because I want to advance myself, whatever. But I think there's sometimes a lack of clarity around what you are and you are not supposed to do. And one of the things I love about my agency, we implemented EOS from the book Traction, and I talk about it all the time. But we got really clear on like core values, but also so anyone who is hired, fired, or rewarded, it's based on those core values. Comes back to ultimately to me as well too. Am I exhibiting those things? Am I talking about them? Are we living them out? And that will give you trust with your people. But it was also process. What do we do? Hey, what are you in charge of, Lauren? And what is Michael in charge of? Are you having crossover where you shouldn't? And so once we got really clear on that, then we could say, all right, what are the things we do on a daily basis? Like as you build out process, and that makes me think of the customer journey. What is the actual customer journey? Once everyone knows, are they then aligned on actually doing those roles? Because if they're not aligned and they say, cool, I get it, I'm gonna still go back and do the thing I want to do. That's not going to help anybody. And then once you're aligned on that stuff, then it's very easy, or it's a lot easier to say, hey, there was a problem. Well, I know that this person it starts with, so I'm going to ping them, and I'm going to ping this person who's after them, or maybe it's the other person's responsibility to talk. If it's R&D's responsibility to talk with packaging, then you start to iterate, and it becomes a lot easier. But I think it's challenging to do because people are just saying, well, this is just, this is my job. I show up and I do this thing and I want to advance my career. So there's not a lot of cohesiveness there.
But I also think that's why getting those people in the room and mapping out that journey and having them understand their impact on the broader picture. If you can explain to supply chain why e-commerce packaging matters and the fact that if they don't have the right lids on their bottles and they break, we have $2 million of fines that are coming back to us, and then they have to go and fix this problem. You just need to provide context to people and help them understand how they fit in the broader picture and how their actions are impacting the broader omni-channel strategy and just approach of the company. I find that to be super, super impactful. That and shared goals. If you are only metrics on getting this package out the door and after that, nothing matters, then hey, I mean, why would you do anything different?
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. If you get people in the room too, and you start asking questions, you'll get answers. Number one, sounds crazy, but you will. And you'll start to get people who discover, like you said, oh, wait, I'm doing that, but you're doing that. Then they'll already realize the problem. You don't have to say you have a problem. They know they have a problem. Then let's talk about how we address it.
100%. And I think there's a couple of different functions that sometimes get left out of conversations around e-commerce, around the digital shelf. And I've done a lot of work recently on category management and specifically eCatman or e-commerce category management. If you have a category management team and you're not focused on your e-commerce category management, that's a huge gap because you can't take the planogram for your store and just apply it online. Totally different ways of shopping. So category management needs to be involved in the conversation. And then another function, revenue growth management. If you don't know how each of your SKUs are performing on each of your retailers and where you should be spending your time and effort from a content standpoint, that is you're just being inefficient and you're probably wasting a lot of dollars creating content on SKUs that shouldn't even be sold online. So I just like to call that out in terms of another tactical thing. If you haven't talked to those functions or they're not in your conversations, you need to bring them in because they're a core part of how you should be selling and going to market.
So you're saying that being omni-channel does not mean being on every channel or every product being on every channel.
It does not. Omni-channel means being optimized on the right channels for your consumer.
I would say one other thing that you could do is utilize a consumer poll software that's not the traditional brand, sit down, do a consumer research study group. Like we utilize something like PickFu. I know there are other ones as well too, but you can easily go in and create a poll and say, look at these 3 products. If it's my product and then 2 other products that are in the category, what do you like? I think you have to answer the right questions. Back to prompt engineering. You have to ask the right questions to get the response. So in a way that it's more objective, but what do you like about these? What do you not like about these? How are you looking at these? What are the things you're looking for? Are we properly displaying that on a page? That you start to get that information instead of waiting for it to show up on Rufus. You can now, and Rufus, of course, will train people, but you can then show up and say, oh, okay, well, I know people are looking for this. Well, let's put it into play. Let's see if it improves click-through. Let's see if it improves conversion rate, and then start to make judgments based on that.
Be comfortable with failing. Just be comfortable with trying things that don't work and pivoting. And that is not easy, especially for larger organizations. Just understanding that there is a level of risk involved, and that's okay. And you need to be able to do that to be successful. You just have to try and figure it out.
I think it's a great place to end it. Try and figure it out. If you want to get together, aligned, a good corporate word that I use all the time now with my daughter. Are we aligned on this punishment that you're? I don't really say that, but that would be funny. Although I have heard her like repeat things that I'm saying, like ROAS, growth, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like you can maybe sit on a sales call. Where can people find you, Lauren, if they want to know more about what you're doing?
They can either connect with me on LinkedIn, or they can go to digitalshelfinstitute.org to look at all of the content and join the community.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me. It's been awesome. It's been a pleasure. Lauren, Livak, Gilbert, people. That's it.
Thanks for having me.
See you, buddy.